It seems pretty good. It does sag when I sit on it, so that's good. Alright, so in the last video of this project, we installed the rear suspension, the rear shock, and found out very quickly that it is not strong enough for the weight of the engine plus myself. So I went on Amazon again, tried to find other shocks that are kind of cheap, kind of small like this, that have a little bit thicker spring. I ended up buying 2 more. And the kind of annoying thing about Amazon, especially with cheap shocks, first of all, I can't find anything that are like name brand shocks or more expensive shocks that are this small. And I did think about possibly looking at bicycle shocks, you know, for like a mountain bike, but those are too small. They're like way shorter than this, and plus I'm not really sure if they'd hold up the weight of, you know, they're designed for a bicycle, not a motorcycle. So I found a couple more on Amazon. The first one I bought was a completely, false listing. It said that it was a smaller spring, but it got here and it's one of these. One of these is the original one that I bought in the last video, and then it didn't work out. And then the other one is this other that I bought on Amazon. That's also not going to work. So that was a false listing. Whatever, gonna keep that anyway. Use it for a different project. And then I found this one. This one's a little bit. It's a little bit taller, but it has a slightly smaller spring. Plus it's red, so it's going to work with the color choice that I've kind of already chosen on this. So we're going to put this one on, and I'm just going to angle it as far forward as possible to hopefully get it to work. If that doesn't work, I did buy a second one of these the tiny little white ones. And if this one doesn't work, we will double up the 2 little white ones and just have double shocks on the rear. But first, I want to see if we can get this one to work. So I'm gonna leave the bottom mount. Hopefully we can reuse this bottom mount. I'm gonna cut off this top mount, and instead of making it to where it has multiple mounting positions on the top, I think we just need one mount position on the top and just have it like as far forward as possible, just like that. And hopefully this shock will work, so therefore we can move on with the gas tank and the rear seat. Hang on, I want to see what this looks like. I mean, that does look kind of cool, but I want to see if the red shock will work first, and we'll save this as a plan B, I guess. Maybe that'll work. Alright, so I gotta sit on it and see if this shock actually will work. It's a little sketchy being on the table, but whatever. Alright, here's the first test. Let's move the brakes. Out of the way. It seems pretty good. It does sag when I sit on it, so that's good. It's still a little on the stiff side, but it does work. It works a lot better. We're probably going to be adding a little bit more weight to this thing with the gas tank and the seat. Not exactly sure where the seat position is going to be. Is it going to be more up here, more down here? Kind of depends on where my feet are going. I'd say it's good. Let's move on to something else. Alright, so the rear shock seems to work perfect. It sags just a little bit when I sit on it, which is perfect. It's exactly what I want. Now, let's start working on building the gas tank. This is going to be the hardest part of this little project because I not only want this thing to look really cool, I want it to look like a regular motorcycle gas tank, just on a much smaller scale. Plus, I need to make room for the carburetors that have to go here. The head kind of sticks out pretty far. So the bottom portion is going to have to kind of be hollow a little bit. So we got to shape the gas tank around that. Yeah, honestly, I'm not really sure how I'm going to do this, but let's just start doing it and I'll figure it out as I go along. Alright, so we got the gas tank to this point right here. Now I've been spending a couple hours trying to figure out how do I cover the sides and have it look like a real gas tank. I'd love to be able to do this where it's like all fluid shapes, rounded corners and everything. You know, this goes to like a concave, goes to a convex, and then rounded corners here and here, and this goes to a nice rounded corner here. I'd love to be able to do that. But I unfortunately with the tools that I have right now, I just can't bend in 2 dimensions. Basically, I can just bend in 1 dimension. That's about it. I can't bend in 2 dimensions. I just can't do that with the tools I have right now. And I did think about buying the right tools, but I didn't feel like spending $600 or $700 on just the cheapest stuff I could find and waiting a week and a half or 2 weeks for it to ship and put this thing to the side. Didn't feel like doing that because I already started doing this. I started trying to use thinner material. This is, I believe, 1/16 of an inch thick. This is easier to shape, but it's still not possible to do in 2 dimensions. This is the thickness that I use for all the gas tanks, 1/8 of an inch thick. It's mildly easy to shape, and it's super easy to weld together. So I think thinner material is out. It's a little bit easier to shape, but it's going to be harder to weld and still not possible to bend in the shapes that I want to do with this. I did think about just cutting out a bunch of like 1.5 to 2 inch strips and doing a bunch of strips. That would be a little bit easier to do because it's a little easier to shape just thin strips than giant sheets. But that would require a ton of welding, basically every 2 inches right here. I'd have to do a seam. I don't think that would turn out like I think it would. We'd have to grind down all the welds, make them blend and everything, and that's going to take a little too long. So I don't think strips is a good idea. I think I'm just going to have to do the best I can with the tools I have now, just do a bunch of one-dimensional bends, and maybe I can use different angles to try and get some other shapes instead of just having just one giant sheet, basically, just bending over like that. It's not going to look the way I want it to look, unfortunately, but it's going to have to be good enough, I guess. so this was the pretty much the best I could do with the limited tools that I had. Basically, I just used two 2x4s and a mallet to kind of, bang these into shape. Now, truth be told, I'm not 100% liking how it kind of turned out. I think the height is good, the width is good, the shape is pretty decent for the minimal tools that I had, but it's just the length that's driving me nuts. This thing it's a little on the long side, I'll admit. I'm trying to keep everything small on this thing to kind of go with the scale of this vehicle, and this gas tank on here just kind of looks a little massive on here, and it's driving me nuts. But there's no way I am, modifying this or redoing it or anything. I put way too much work into this to change this. I think it's just going to have to be good enough, and I'm going to have to, live with it. I think if I took 2 inches off the front, this thing would look way better, but it is way too late to change this thing now. I'm not doing that. That's way too much work. So next thing we need to do, obviously, is weld it together. We need to weld the gas cap on the top, as well as we need to figure out a place to weld a bung on the bottom, so therefore we can have a fuel line going from here into the carburetors. Now, because of how I had to do, these 4 panels, I'm not 100% sure if I want to try and see if I want to blend these welds together to make it look like all one big panel. We'll see how it looks once it's all welded together. Next thing is, let's pressure test this thing. Let's make sure none of these welds leak. Alright, so I pressure tested it, and there was 2 leaks, as there always is, and I just covered them up, and now it's not leaking anymore. Now, as far as the idea of trying to blend these welds together on the front to try to make it look like all one big sheet of metal, I'm not really sure how well it's going to work out, because when I started welding this thing, the plates kind of started warping a little bit, and some of them, but not all of them, are misaligned a little bit, so I'm not sure how well it's going to look if we do try to blend these welds together, because it's going to, you know, not be a smooth transition. It's going to be a little wavy and all that kind of stuff. So we may just leave it for now, and I don't think it looks terrible. I don't know. For now, let's just leave it. Now, I am a little concerned with how close the top of the cylinder is to the bottom of the gas tank, because of how we had to make this, and this portion right here, this was kind of a nightmare to weld, but it didn't leak, which is a miracle. As far as how close the top of the cylinder is to the bottom of the gas tank, I'm a little concerned about that. So therefore, I bought this on Amazon. This is basically aluminized heat barrier, can withstand up to 2,000 degrees radiant heat reflection. Basically just a heat shield with an adhesive backing. Now, I will be putting this on the bottom of the gas tank, so therefore, hopefully, when we're riding this thing, then the engine starts heating up. That heat doesn't transfer into the gas tank and cause some problems that we definitely don't want. So hopefully this will solve that issue. Now, as far as any type of air filter for the carburetors, we do have like a inch, 3/4 inch gap between the top of the carburetors and the bottom of the gas tank. So we don't really have that much room for air filters, but I'm probably just gonna get like some cloth or whatever, and then just drape it over the inlets and zip tie it on there. I think that's, we're not taking this thing off-roading, so I'm not worried about dust getting kicked up and getting sucked in there. We're mainly riding this thing on the road. So if we just have like a cloth filter, I think that's gonna be good enough for this project. And we do also have to figure out how we're gonna attach this thing to the frame. Not really sure how we're gonna do that yet. Now, next thing we need to do in the next video of this project is build the seat. I kind of cut this out as a cardboard template of what I want the seat to look like. It's gonna look something like that. Can you guys see that? Not really. So once we get the seat installed, then we can start working on handlebars. Then we need to shorten all of these and turn these into bolts before we can bolt this stuff together with this in the front, as well as I kind of want to redo these, how that is attached to there. So once we do all that, then we can start working on figuring out where the foot pegs are going to go. I have no idea how we're going to do the gear shifter. That's going to be a little tricky, but all that stuff's going to have to be for the next couple videos of this project. But for now, I got to end this video here. Thank y'all for watching. I'll see ya in the next video.